House Republicans go to war with each other, marking the first U.S. war in decades that didn't make Lockheed Martin a fortune. Democrats want Trump off ballots. Republicans want Biden impeached. And independents want candidates whose entire platform isn't just, "at least I'm not the other guy." And Hillary Clinton calls for re-educating Trump supporters. Then more on this week's headlines. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. The Federal Trade Commission and 17 states have filed an antitrust lawsuit against Amazon, citing punitive and coercive tactics to unlawfully maintain its monopolies and exploiting its monopoly power to enrich itself. It could be a while before a verdict is delivered, or if the FTC signs up for Amazon Prime, it can be delivered the same day. It just costs $139 a year? They raise the price again? You get 'em, FTC. No mercy. The lawsuit is similar to an antitrust case the U.S. brought against Google last month. It seems like the U.S. is trying to rein in monopolies. Hopefully the next one they go after is the board game monopoly. Can you name any other board games about monopolies? Didn't think so. Monopolies monopolizing monopolies. Send them straight to jail. Don't pass go. Don't collect $200. Speaking of long, boring fights over money, the U.S. government shutdown. In case you missed the conclusion to America's latest shutdown scare, Congress passed a stopgap bill at the last minute to keep the government funded, for now. If you did miss it, don't worry. You'll get to see another government shutdown scare in mid-November, when the funding measure is up and we get to live through all this all over again. Man, living month to month and barely getting by is probably the most relatable thing Congress has ever done. This scare was a real barn burner, so much so that a fire alarm went off. New York Democratic Representative Jamal Bowman triggered a fire alarm in a congressional building just before the House voted on the spending bill. Republicans accused Bowman of doing this intentionally to delay the vote, cause a shutdown, and make the GOP look bad. But Bowman says it was an accident, explaining, "I'm embarrassed to admit that I activated the fire alarm mistakenly thinking it would open the door. I regret this and sincerely apologize for any confusion this caused." That would be embarrassing. But even more embarrassing, getting roasted by Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Hi everyone, we are at the infamous door where Jamal Bowman claims he had to pull a fire alarm to get out. Come on over here. This right here is a fire alarm. Nowhere does it say pull the fire alarm to open the exit door.
Not everyone's happy a shutdown was averted, or at least how it was averted. Florida Representative Matt Gaetz filed a motion to oust Kevin McCarthy, a fellow Republican, as Speaker of the House.
Speaker McCarthy made an agreement with House conservatives in January, and since then he has been in brazen, repeated material breach of that agreement. This agreement that he made with Democrats to really blow past a lot of the spending guardrails we'd set up is a last straw.
A politician didn't keep a promise? Gaetz is right. This is completely shocking and unprecedented. And McCarthy said he wasn't scared of Gaetz and was confident he would survive a vote to oust him. Well, bride goeth before the fall, apparently, because McCarthy was voted out of his role as Speaker. This is the first time this has happened in U.S. history. Congressman Patrick McHenry is acting as Speaker pro tempore until a new one is chosen. A candidate forum will be held on Tuesday, with an election following the next day. Gaetz wanted to remove McCarthy because of an alleged side deal he made with Democrats over spending more to fund Ukraine's war with Russia. This suspicion stems from remarks Biden made over the weekend, according to CNN. When asked whether he would trust McCarthy when the next deal comes around, Biden said, "We just made one about Ukraine, so we'll find out." Democratic lawmakers, however, said that they hadn't heard anything about a new deal, so Biden's remarks caused confusion. Then again, most everything Biden says these days causes confusion.
Representing the groundbreaking legacy of hip-hop in America, LL Cool J. By the way, that man's got biceps bigger than my thighs. I think he's been...
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I long for the more coherent days of President George W. Bush. Trying to clear up the confusion, the Pentagon announced funding for Ukraine was omitted in the stopgap spending bill and said that with a mere $5 billion left, it will run out of money to send weapons to the country within months. As if this Republican infighting wasn't enough, some GOP lawmakers tell Fox News they're looking to expel Gaetz, saying no one can stand him. No one can stand him? I get that. I mean, just look at him. Have you ever seen a worse case of resting "Do you know who my dad is?" face? House Republicans seem to be at war with each other, and who knows if they'll be able to come to consensus on who the new Speaker of the House will be. Whoever it is, let's just hope they can decide it in only 14 rounds of voting this time. And after the break, JP Morgan CEO predicts a 3.5-day work week. Welcome back. The CEO of JP Morgan predicts that AI could lead to a 3.5-day work week. Is it just me, or does this sound worse than robots just outright taking our jobs entirely? At least then you can sleep in on Mondays. But with them only taking 30% of our job, now we're both poor and employed. Which honestly isn't that different from how most people are living these days. Hooray for wages never growing at the same rate of inflation. No wonder there's a new strike I cover every single week. By the way, this week's strike is 75,000 Kaiser Permanente workers staging a 3-day strike, mostly in western states. The strike lasted 3 days and was the largest healthcare worker strike in U.S. history. But AI isn't just affecting us lowly poors, it's also affecting celebrities. Tom Hanks warned his fans via an Instagram post about an advertisement for a dental plan. The ad features Tom Hanks, but it isn't him. The actor says this was created with AI. Soon that's going to be the go-to excuse for anything anyone doesn't want to take responsibility for. Bowman should have just said that was AI. The 2024 presidential race is already quite insane. Donald Trump's strategy seems to be framing all his legal woes as political persecution, and it seems to be working for him. He keeps polling better after criminal indictments. Biden's strategy, on the other hand...
I'll ask you nicely, but he won't.
The top comment on this video is someone praying to protect the children from this entity. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton is back, and in an interview with CNN, she says Trump supporters need to be re-educated.
At some point, maybe there needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members.
I can hear Trump's polls going up. What did she think would happen? Then again, if anyone knows anything about trying to stop Trump, only to get him elected president, it's Hillary Clinton. That's why some are trying to outright get Trump disqualified from running at all. But the Supreme Court declined to consider a case brought by John Anthony Castro, a Republican presidential candidate, to disqualify Trump. A liberal group in Michigan also filed a lawsuit trying to keep Trump's name off the ballot, which is probably the most upsetting attack, because if there's one thing Donald Trump loves, it's seeing his name on things. President Biden is also dealing with rivals coming after him before next year's election. Republicans in the House Oversight Committee said a bank they subpoenaed during their Hunter Biden probe showed 2 wire transfers from Chinese nationals in 2019 listed Joe Biden's Delaware home as the beneficiary address. Hunter's attorney says this is because this was a documented loan, not a distribution or payout, that was wired from a private individual to his new bank account, which listed the address on his driver's license, his parents' address, because it was his only permanent address at the time. So his argument is that a grown man conducting multi-million-dollar business deals listed his father's address not because he was part of the deals or as a way of paying for access to him. It's just because he moves a lot and his dad's address is the easiest place for him to receive mail. And he super promises his dad had nothing to do with any of this. I may have jumped to conclusions earlier. Matt Gaetz doesn't have the worst case of resting "Do you know who my father is?" face. It's Hunter Biden. This explanation isn't stopping Republicans from suspecting President Biden was in on his son's shady business deals, and they're officially starting impeachment hearings against Joe Biden. So Republicans are trying to impeach Biden, while Democrats are trying to convict Trump. Is it just me, or does this feel less like an election and more like battle royale? Honestly, that would be a more fun way to decide leaders. And after the break, a city in California grants the right of freedom to elephants. Welcome back. Ojai, California passed an ordinance granting freedom from forced confinement to elephants, saying the creatures have a right to act autonomously. So while California will still have a lot of homeless tents, at least there will be fewer circus tents. The Ojai City Councilwoman who introduced the ordinance, Leslie Rule, says, "It isn't a joke. We can do some real good here, as well as being on the right side of history. Let's encourage society to evolve its basic understanding of its relationship to all non-human entities." Our relationship to all non-human entities? Man, that makes that bacon cheeseburger I had for lunch pretty awkward. Don't think there's a counselor alive that can repair that relationship. Since this is happening in California, I assume these elephants that are being released from behind bars will immediately turn to smash and grab shoplifting, emphasis on the smash. Speaking of California, Senator Dianne Feinstein passed away last week at 90 years old. Feinstein was a role model for younger generations, mainly because, like her, we're also going to be working until the day we die. At least our work week will only be 3.5 days, I guess. Feinstein died of natural causes, aka being 90. She exhibited memory issues in her final months while still serving as a senator, I remind you. But she wasn't formally diagnosed with dementia, and doctors said if she had, it wouldn't have been the cause of her death. California Governor Gavin Newsom announced Feinstein's seat will be filled by LaFonza Butler. She's the first openly lesbian black senator. Butler is also the president of Emily's List, an organization dedicated to working to elect Democratic pro-choice women up and down the ballot and across the country. So Butler is a pro-choice woman of color who's a member of the LGBTQ community. Sounds about as California as you can get. This would be like if a Texas senator died and got replaced with a slab of brisket dressed like Yosemite Sam. Yep, Butler is pretty Californian, just one problem. Records show that Butler has spent the last 2 years living in Maryland. A spokesperson for Newsom's office says Butler is a longtime California resident and homeowner. She moved to the D.C. area when she became president of Emily's List. Butler has already re-registered to vote in California. They couldn't find anyone already in California to represent California? Butler worked on Kamala Harris's presidential campaign in 2020, and Vice President Harris is the one who swore her into office. That's nice. Two politicians who got their positions solely by having the best credentials with no other considerations. None at all. Speaking of people being put to work in an area they don't reside, former President Bill Clinton says that illegal immigrants overwhelming New York City should be allowed to work and pay taxes to help contribute to the community. He also says they can be used to help America's low birth rate. While that's an idea that would upset many, importing illegal immigrants into America to create more Americans, it's not nearly as upsetting as what I assume was Clinton's first idea, offering to improve the birth rate himself. New York City is struggling with the surge of illegal immigrants arriving in the city. New York Governor Kathy Hochul admits it's an issue, saying the border is too open.
We want them to have a limit on who can come across the border. It is too open right now.
But the next day after admitting this, Hochul said she'd like to put the illegal immigrants to work and announced 18,000 new jobs to asylum seekers with temporary protected status, pulling new jobs out of thin air to give to illegal immigrants. I'm sure this won't entice anyone else to come. And for the record, these 18,000 new jobs won't help out the majority of the 125,000 illegal immigrants that have arrived in New York City, at least so far. On the bright side, for all the unemployed American citizens already living in New York City that had trouble finding a job, maybe they can get one of these new jobs Hochul created. They just have to pretend to not have any ID and not speak any English. To be fair to Hochul, as Jamal Bowman indicated, New York politicians have a hard time knowing when something is an emergency. She's changed course after sounding the alarm, but maybe that's just because she thought the alarm was a door handle. Feels like I'm covering the fall of the Roman Empire in slow motion. If you too often think about the Roman Empire, then check out this video from our new channel, Gamers Unbeaten. If you want to make sure we can keep making episodes like this, click that orange button to support us on Patreon. All it takes is $1 an episode, and you can set a monthly limit. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.